her strong. And I don't mean...
That's my intro. I'll play it back for you guys with some extra stuff in the beginning. You can call it the director's cut if you want to. That's what I do.
Source of thought, and it's also at the source of all matter.
So this will be a little bit different.
Into here, you are in their waters, and you may never safely return, because this ensures that you are dead on the waters. You see, this is a ship in the sea of, well, it's in the sea of air, in the sea of water. That is why it is a citizen ship, whereas this is the living document. And when you go into court or anywhere like that, and you bring that into you, that notifies those dead entities that you are living, that you are a man or a woman, not a person. This is a person. This is a man.
Let me know how it sounds.
And so I am not a person. I am a man, a flesh and blood man. This person can go to jail. This person, they can have this person on your birth certificate, which is your death certificate, but your live born record tells you that you are living. Please acquire your live birth record, folks. Please go to the registry and have this with you at all times, and get out of the jurisdiction of the police and the judges, for they are committing fraud against your name, against your living being status, and they are reducing you to a person. A person is a corporation. You don't want to be a corporation. A corporation is a corpse. It's dead. It does not live, it does not speak. They can't hear your voice in court. It's a commercial process. They can only deal with the dead in their ship of citizenships. And you don't want to be a citizen. You want to be a sovereign under God's jurisdiction, and take yourself out of their ship, their citizenship, because this is a ship of Admiralty law. And when you go into here, you are in their waters, and you may never safely return.
I got Russell Brandon here too on General Motors.
On this edition of the Fifth Estate,
I have a warning for you tonight.
it was General Motors' deadly secret.
What happened to this GM car? crappy little Cobalt.
Mine was a Buick. It did
Now, a
the same
startling
thing.
look inside the GM
In
culture.
North Carolina,
It
this
put
is
a
in
price
Canada.
on their customers' lives.
GM made a business decision not
Same
to fix
thing
these safety
happened.
defects.
The dead Canadians who might have been saved.
He died for a 57-cent
They
piece
told me that there was a
that should
recall,
have been
that there was
fixed
a manufactured part
over
to
10 years
replace
ago.
it, all this stuff.
And the
This
life
just
or
proves
death question.
all of
What's
it a lie.
Transport Canada doing to protect you? It's incumbent upon the manufacturer to let Transport Canada know about a defect in a timely fashion. That's right.
General Motors,
Almost a decade and a half in timely
vehicles
fashion.
catching fire.
I'm Bob McEwen. This is the Fifth Estate.
This is what happened to my
Ahead,
vehicle.
the story of the switch from hell.
Burned my
Safety
children
defects.
alive.
GM didn't. The company somehow
glitch.
rationalized that a loss of power, even at high speed, wasn't really a safety issue, but more of a customer convenience issue.
The
And there
fuck?
was no recall. Instead, what General Motors did was send this service bulletin to its dealers in Canada and the U.S., telling them the Cobalt ignition could be rotated out of position by an especially heavy key ring.
And this is
But
what
no
they're saying
warning
with
about
my
the deadly
Buick Rendezvous
possibilities if it
too.
was.
2004 Buick
And-
Rendezvous.
Indication that General Motors was
And
about
it says
to
no
secretly
indication. It
replace
misses
that
it there.
tiny but defective ignition
On
part.
YouTube, it will
the
skip it
detent
every
plunger,
time.
and no recall. According to auto industry critic Clarence Ditlow, GM has long been keenly aware of the cost of recalling and repairing its vehicles.
They certainly do a cost analysis. They've done cost-benefit analysis of what it would cost to save a life.
A case in point, the memo from a GM engineer in the 70s that was infamous for its callous calculation of the cost per car, at which it no longer made financial sense for General Motors to try to save a life with a part change or recall. How much was too much? Incredibly, that prohibitive amount was just $2.40 per vehicle. So it's worth it to pay the damages of the lawsuit when somebody dies in a fire because of a faulty part,
Yeah, right.
rather than
My kids
Or
died in
not
fire.
pay? We're not paying?
We're all set on
Anything?
fire.
It's cheaper to
Yeah, my ass. Pay
pay the
anything.
lawsuit than it is
Fuck their
to
money.
put the safety into the vehicle.
Shares of
Take them
General
all down.
Motors fell sharply today after the brokerage firm Goldman Sachs urged investors to sell the stock.
And as the world economy began its downward spiral in 2007 and 8, financial considerations apparently were far more pressing than fixing those troublesome ignition switches.
The
Yeah.
idea of
$2 a
having
car.
to recall, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of cars to
that
make
many?
and repair was going to cost the company money at a time when it
That
didn't
many?
have money.
Marianne Keller is a longtime auto industry analyst who's written 2 books about General Motors and its culture.
You don't speak up in meetings. You don't talk about the problem. If you do talk about the problem and become very aggressive about it, you're branded a disgruntled employee and your career ends. Simple.
Hey guys, you are looking at GM CEO Dan Eckerson. He has just driven the first boat up onto the stage here.
After all the attention to bankruptcy and bailouts, GM was intent on shifting the spotlight, here announcing a new electric car. But it still couldn't escape its past. April 2013,
Just
Detroit,
moved to
Michigan.
Detroit. I get to look at them every day.
Lawyer Lance
coming
Cooper,
after him.
representing Brooke Melton's family
Full
in their
force
suit
coming
against
after
General
these
Motors,
motherfuckers.
started taking depositions.
Oh,
On the hot seat, the GM engineer who'd
Even Flo is
supervised
next.
development of the Cobalt ignition switch.
Maritime
Who
Who gets to the hot
Admiralty
seat?
Remember,
Who
he
gets
called it
that
the
far?
switch from hell.
Primarily, it was the project engineer for the ignition switch in that vehicle.
You'll also recall Lance Cooper's team had discovered that GM secretly replaced the defective part. But asked whether he'd approved the change, Engineer DeGiorgio denied any knowledge of it whatsoever.
We certainly did not approve a detent plunger design change.
I asked him as many different ways as I could whether he knew of a change, whether GM knew of a change. He said, I don't know. GM doesn't know. He said, I've spoken with the supplier. They don't know of any change. There was no change ever made. And then we presented him with the photograph showing the change.
I win.
And his position
They're
was,
fucking
I don't know
liars.
anything about this.
Did you ever authorize
Ray DiGiorgio was then asked by the General Motors lawyer if he had approved that new ignition switch. Again, he denied it all.
Absolutely not.
So if any such change was made, it was made without your knowledge and authorization.
That is correct.
But after DiGiorgio made those claims, he knew nothing. This document surfaced, a letter from GM to the supplier called Delphi that made the controversial ignition switches. It was dated 2006, but only came to light 8 years later after...
We go through some news you can trust. Can we look at specifics? Because sometimes,
tell me what you want to know.
I think sometimes you can make generalities, right? And they don't. You can get away with a lot.
Well, I think
let's talk about
itself as a generality.
Let's look at this one. In the book, you say in the book, let's get the General Motors. Let's take it back from its shareholders. Scribble out the name and the logo, and let's use its resources for something more valuable.
Now, Evan, I hope you're not going to use this opportunity for you, an Oxford-educated economist, to come on the TV and be rude to me.
I'm not being rude. I want
an autodidact, a self-educated man, for simply trying to suggest that there might be an alternative to corporate hegemony, that there might be an alternative to our governments bending over for the benefit of big corporations.
I want to raise this
that's what ordinary people care about, mate. It's affecting ordinary people's lives. I don't know if it's affecting the places you hang out, where you drink. Tell me what you need to know.
Yeah. There may be. I mean, you're very good in this book, and you're going to get a lot of praise for the way you document.
Praise. I want change.
You're going to get a lot of praise for identifying
a
lot that people don't like about society at the moment. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to spot things that
All
are wrong
on
with
General
society
Motors.
at the moment, right?
Absolutely.
We have the dual bus you talk about. 85 people in the world who have as much as 55 people.
What's your point, Evan? What's your point, mate? Come on.
You propose another system, and it might be that your system is better, or it might be that you haven't had the imagination to think about the problems that the other system has. So I'm trying to get into a detail here, which you want to take.
Imagination. That's your accusation. What's the problem with my imagination?
Take an example of something you
Take
said.
the example.
Take General Motors from its shareholders.
Absolutely.
Do you know who owns it? The United Auto Workers Union owns a chunk of it. The Canadian government owns a chunk of it. You take it from them. And
Evan, are you seriously telling me that the corporate world, companies like Monty Graph, well, this is what I'm going to take. This
seriously, and I'm really seriously, and I'm really
okay.
But you get rid of a lot of the upbits.
What is your point?
My point is that revolutions sometimes have good effects, but they also wipe out more than they intended.
Thank you. You could have said that in 5 seconds without the daft graph.
Well, I think the graph
is my point. Is the systems we have at the moment aren't going to change within themselves because those systems are working for precisely the function they're intended to. Yeah. They work for they enhance the power and profits of elites. They support the rights of corporate down blind alleys about silly administrative quibbles. Let me be absolutely clear. I don't trust politicians. No one does. I don't trust the corporations in this country that you inadvertently work for every time you take this line with me. What I'm saying is that people can run their own workplaces. People can run their own communities. The people of this country have been patronised enough, mate. And let's not do it in this interview.
You have another one. I'm not patronising anybody.
Look,
they can mess up all of them. Well, do you really believe that cars are made to break down?
What, built-in obsolescence? Yeah, I believe in built-in obsolescence, don't you?
Well, I tell you what, when we were kids,
people make deliberately any one of us.
We went on holiday, and we could barely guarantee to get
a much more tactile than the Jeremy geezer. He hated it when I touched his legs.
The cars were so unreliable, they've become much more reliable. And I sort of think the companies that made obsolescence cars went out of business.
You think that, do you?
Well,
I honestly think that.
I posit that as at least a theory of capitalism.
I'm not going to sit here with you. I know you know that capitalism isn't working. I know that a system that requires quantitative easing to hold it together, while energy companies are subsidised by our taxes, while renewable energies are ignored. I know you can't support that system, Evan. I know you're mates with like CEOs of big business.
Let me bring up the graph.
I don't want to look at a graph, mate. I ain't got time for a bloody graph.
That's another way of thinking about it. Well, that's the normal world. That's the garden with the snake in it, and that's chaos. That's the chaos that arises when your plans collapse, right? That's the world and the underworld. And so the underworld's always there, and it's lurking beneath everything. It's like the figure of the shark in the Jaws poster, right? There you are, swimming at the top, and there's that terrible thing underneath that can come up and pull you down. That's the world. So you need to be able to operate here, and you need to be able to operate here. And when you operate here, well, that's when you rescue your father from the belly of the whale. That's when you go down, you see, when you're down in chaos and you don't know what the hell's going on, you have to rediscover the values that have oriented people forever. That's what you have to discover. So, for example, when I'm dealing with people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, and they've usually encountered someone malevolent, they have to relearn the description of good and evil. Because if they don't, they have no framework. They're lost. They think, well, there's a malevolence afoot in the world, and I'm a naive prey animal for the malevolence of the world. It's like, well, good luck functioning under that set of assumptions, man. You just do not recover from that. You stay at home in your burrow. That's what you do. Well, you go down into that, you think, okay, well, malevolence is afoot. I better be the sort of person that can understand it and deal with it. And that's another reason why you have to transform yourself into a monster. That's the Jungian incorporation of the shadow. It's no bloody joke. Because the only thing that a monster won't mess with is another monster. And you might say, well, I don't want to transform myself into a monster. It's like, you don't have a choice. You can either be a pathetic monster, or you can be a monster with some power. I don't want to transform myself into a monster. It's like, you don't have a choice. You can either be a pathetic monster, or you can be a monster with some power. Those are your options. There's no non-monster alternative. Weak or strong. And I don't mean strong like dominating tyrant strength. That isn't what I mean at all. I mean strength like functioning at a funeral strength. And that's a kind of monstrosity. And when you're down in chaos, that's what you have to rediscover.